Thanks, Senator Schumer. We're going to start with questions with Congressman Raskin.
Thank you very much, Senator Durbin and Senator Schumer. Thanks for joining us and for your powerful leadership on behalf of the rule of law and the Constitution in New York and all over the country. Your citation of Senator Warnock reminds me of something that Ben Franklin said, where he said, I've observed that wrong is always growing more wrong until there's no bearing it anymore, but that right, however opposed, comes right at last. And so
Warnock paraphrased Benjamin Franklin.
Well, they were thinking along parallel lines, undoubtedly. Thank you for joining us. I want to recognize my Democratic colleagues who've joined us today. Hank Johnson from Georgia, Ted Lieu from California, Deborah Ross from North Carolina, Chuy Garcia from Illinois, Mary Gay Scanlon from Pennsylvania, and Becca Ballin from Vermont. But I just have a couple of questions for you guys. One is I want to say that when, pursuant to Senator Warnock and Ben Franklin, we get through this nightmare, and we will, and when we reclaim the trajectory of American history for democracy and freedom, and we will, all of you will be remembered by future generations for what you did to stand up for us during this time. And I don't want you to think that anybody doesn't notice, because we do notice what it is you're doing. But I want to ask you this, because in addition to the substantive defense of the rule of law and the Constitution you're engaged in, all of you are also modeling what it means to be an attorney general. Because we've got an attorney general of the United States who literally thinks her job is to be the president's lawyer and to do whatever the president wants her to do, and thinks that the Department of Justice is the law firm for the president and his political party. I mean, that's a remarkable deformation and diversion of American history. So although it's indisputable that all of you are Democrats, I don't think you're here to represent the Democrats or the Democratic Party of your state. And I just wonder if you would say a word about what it means to you to be an attorney general and to try to act on behalf of the rule of law and not a political program. Perhaps Attorney General Raul, if you'd start.
Thank you for that question. I serve as the Attorney General of the state of Illinois, and in Illinois, I am independently elected from the governor, and by way of that, I serve the rule of law. I don't serve the governor. I do represent the governor. I represent the agencies within state, but I serve the rule of law, and I take that distinction very seriously, and I think that the U.S. Attorney General should operate with the same sort of, she shouldn't be loyal to the president, but she should be loyal to the rule of law. That does not mean you're not representing the government and the administration, but you have to do so within the bounds of the rule of law, and we take that very seriously.
Is there any one of you who would describe your job as being the governor's lawyer? Exclusively, in any way, okay. So I don't know if anybody wanted to add anything else on this. Yes, Attorney General Campbell.
I'll just add, it's similar in Massachusetts, elected by the people, and I'm accountable to the people in upholding the rule of law and protecting their rights and protecting our state's economy. I would just stress, and I think the NIH case, which we were all a part of, whether it's the first case or even the second iteration of that case, to protect access to these critical life-saving medical research, clinical trials. This is billions of dollars that go to every state in the country. We came together not looking at, okay, how do we just protect those who are Democrats or identify as Democrats in this country? We came together recognizing the unlawful actions by this administration to cut that funding. In NIH won quickly on a Friday night and mobilized to show up in court on Monday because we knew what was at stake. When you talk about a child having pediatric cancer or a vet dealing with PTSD, we don't look at whether or not they have a D or an R by their names. We mobilize to advance that litigation to protect the public health, not even only of those folks in our state, but to protect the public health of everyone across this country while at the same time upholding the rule of law. And I think it's just a great example of a great example of how we do our work regardless of political affiliation or even demographic.
Well, thank you for doing that. And Ellison and Plotkin, let me just twist the question a little bit. One of the things you guys are doing is defending the integrity of federal laws and programs that we've adopted. And because of the very restrictive standing rules that the court has imposed against Congress going to court to try to get our laws implemented, in a weird way, you're standing up for the laws that we've participated in passing. But that's for all of the people, because after all, it's your representatives in Congress who voted for them as well. But I wonder if you could just reflect a little bit on that role you're playing in terms of making federal law work for everybody in the country as a state attorney general.
Chairman Raskin, we regard the laws that Congress passes as fundamentally the prerogative of the people who populate this country and send members to Congress. And so for an executive to usurp the role of Congress in appropriations or establishment of agencies or anything like that, we view as an outrageous overreach that simply cannot be tolerated. As I noted in my comments, the things that the president is trying to do, you probably can do if you follow the rules, but you cannot do it vis-a-vis executive order or edict or proclamation or this is how I feel this morning. The fact is that there are procedures that they can follow. They got to go to Congress. You want to abolish the Department of Education, as horrible of an idea as I believe that is, you have to go through Congress to do that. So he's not only doing things that I think are harmful to the American people, he's doing them in a way that is harmful to our system of justice and democracy.
Great. And then finally, forgive me.
I was just going to note, Representative Raskin, that what you said at the start of this is the core of many of the lawsuits we filed. Article 1 gives this body the broadest powers, particularly when it comes to passing laws, spending money. And a bulk of the cases we have talked about and have brought have been the president. When we say he can't act like a king, it means he can't take actions that you have done and put into law, signed into law by a president, passed by a Congress, and decide on a whim that he wants to, say, convert a Department of Transportation highway program into an immigration enforcement program. That is not what the Constitution allows. And so our lawsuits have been about standing up in many ways for the authority of this body to do the important work that it does.
Good timing.
Thank you. I want to follow up on the line of questioning that was had for Mr. Beauvais, since you were present for that, and ask you all the same question. And Judge Artel, I'll start with you. Would it ever be appropriate for the Justice Department to take the position that they should effectively tell a district court to pound sand and ignore a court order?
Well, I just think that there are exceptions, as I indicated before. There's stays that can be pursued. There's motions for rehearing, appeals.
Yeah, that's not my question. Would it ever be appropriate for the Justice Department to tell the court, we're going to ignore your order?
I mean, Abraham Lincoln did that with the Dred Scott case.
I'm hoping we're not going to go back to the Civil War or Dred Scott. You seem to be having some hesitancy about this question. Would you have difficulty if the government ignored your order in holding them in contempt?
Senator, I would not have any difficulty enforcing any court order that I enter. Obviously, if I enter a court order, I would expect it to be followed by no matter who the party is.
Including by the Justice Department under the Trump administration?
Including the government as well, yes.
Okay. Mr. Dudek, same question.
I would expect the parties in a case before me to follow the order regardless of who they are.
Okay. Same question.
Yes, Senator, I too would expect orders to be followed. Of course, if I suspected that there were a problem or an issue with that, there is a process for ascertaining whether a court order has not been followed, and I would follow that process.
And that process involves an order to show cause, why they shouldn't be held in contempt. And there are judges holding those hearings contemporaneous with this one. Let's say you hold that hearing and you find that the Justice Department has been in willful contempt, knowing and willful contempt. What kind of sanctions would you entertain under those circumstances?
Senator, it's hard to answer in the abstract. I know that there are a host of sanctions that can be entered on a finding of contempt. I would not hesitate to enter an appropriate sanction, whatever the case would require. I'd have to, look at the particular kind of matter, the severity and extent of the violation of the court order, and those would all be things that would be considered in such a hearing. But what I can say just as a general matter is I would expect that any lawful order that I issue with jurisdiction over the case and the parties should be followed unless or until stayed or reversed or disturbed otherwise on appeal.
Well, and building on that answer, Ms. Gaylord-Moe, let's say that the contempt involved rendering someone out of the country to a maximum security prison in violation of their right to be heard, in violation of habeas corpus. What kind of sanction would you order if you found after a hearing and an order to show cause that the government was willfully in contempt?
Senator, I'm obviously not going to comment on any pending cases, and I'm not going to weigh in on political controversies. I can tell you that the answer to your question is, do I expect the parties in a case that's pending in front of me to comply with my orders? And the answer is yes.
And you would expect that, notwithstanding the fact that they may choose to appeal or choose to disagree with your order, in the absence of a higher court judgment that stays your order, you would expect and you would indeed compel the government to comply, would you not?
As a judge, I follow the law, and I expect the parties to do the same.
Okay, that doesn't really answer my question. So in the absence of an appeal from your order, in the absence of a stay of your judgment, if the government refuses your order, would you hold them in contempt?
If the elements that would make contempt appropriate under the law were met, and I held a hearing that I felt satisfied that at the conclusion the law compelled the entry of contempt sanctions, then absolutely I would do that.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Schiff, and thank you so much for our nominees for being here with us today. I know people traveled far and wide to join you. That means they support you and wish all the best in your future careers. Certainly, it is an honor for me. I often take over this gavel from the chair and serve as